What's up? It's Dave Bloom, and I'm going to build a hoverable card grid with Aviator. I've been looking around at a bunch of different portfolio sites, and most of them have some variation of this kind of thing. Not a huge fan of the bento design and what it makes my eyes do, but I feel like building a simple card grid is a good kind of instructive example of how to use Aviator, how to use Aviator CSS utility classes, and just generally what the vibe is when you're building in this thing. So let's just build one. I'm gonna start with a blank page that I made called card grid, and I'm just gonna show you around. So this is an empty page, and I'm just going to add a blank node to it. The things that you stack in Aviator I call nodes. Some people call them blocks, some people call them containers or elements or whatever. I'm just calling them nodes. I came from Beaver Builder, so don't at me, bro. So let's make a new container, and we're just gonna say div, right? And we can put stuff in that div. And what you might be used to doing is just giving this div a class and then going to a custom CSS and saying something like my div padding 5% or something like that, and then you have that. So what you can do instead with Aviator's utility classes is you can just ditch having to work in two different contexts and put that information right inside the HTML as a utility class. And this is different from what you might see in something like Tailwind CSS, where they have this. And that requires a little bit of mental parsing. That actually equals 2rem, I think, out of the box. So if I wanted to just do 2rem, I could do that. And then when I look at it, amidst a bunch of other utility classes, I can see that it's padding 2rem. I don't have to parse it out. So let's bump this up by just highlighting the number and hitting up on the arrows, just like you can in the Chrome Dev Tools. And 5rem seems fine. Okay, let's make a child of that that's going to be our card. We're going to make a 3-column card grid. And when you hover over it, the image is in the background and it'll scale up or something. So let's use a special comment, SCM tab, which will be our card, which will also register it as a clickable destination in our little table of comments here. So if I had other stuff, which I will do in a second, other stuff, then you can use this as a kind of registered local navigation to jump to areas of your code. See that? Okay. So let's make another, let's hit Command S to format the code, and just a div with another class, and this is going to be our card. We're going to make it, let's see, well, let's just start, let's leave that open-ended. We're going to say image, our card image, and card content. Hit Command S to clean it up again, and you can also see that we have this stuff now. Okay, so let's give it a border, and what you can do inside of Aviator, I've taken the Roy G. Biv color values. If you just type RR or OO or YY or whatever, you can give things a little helpful border. You can actually leave those classes on there. They won't be evaluated in the front end, but it just helps you kind of see what is this. And so if I added display grid calls 3 gap 4rem, then we get that, and we'd see that we'd be able to make copies of this and have a 3-column grid. Okay, let's go back to our template, and this is the card we're going to work with. Actually, maybe we'll do 2 columns. Okay, big card. So let's start with our content. We're going to make a div in here, and let's just put what I call a core, which is a combination of different size text, a heading and a maybe running text. So maybe core large. And that is going to be inheriting some of the design system type utilities, like larger, largest. Probably want to go with larger. And we might not even need the paragraph here. We just have a title, and maybe we just hit Command E to select all the text within the tag and just say project title. And let's make this padded, because we want the content to be what gives the card its size, and I'll show you why in a second. Maybe we say padding 2rem, padding top, like 100 pixels or something. Let's beef that up. There we go. That's kind of cardy. Card is DB. Okay, so terrible dad joke. All right, let's do border radius. 2 rem. Make it a real cardy card. Okay, and we're going to just save all that, and let's get the image going. I have some also special placeholder image syntax. How about a 16 by 9 image 1? There we go. And we already know that we need to overflow hidden on the parent. And we probably want to absolutely position this image. You can just type absolute and hit tab. And we got to relatively position the card. And maybe make it the full height of the thing. So height full. And why not width full at the same time. And object fit cover to make sure it doesn't get all stretched out. And because this is absolutely positioned, it kind of creates its own stacking context. So I have to make this guy relative as well. And so I'm able to kind of like compose the styles that I want, color, white, like as I think them. And though this might look like gobbledygook and the syntax might require a little bit of learning, like if you can get here, you don't have to mess around with like settings forms and responsive stuff ever again. And I'll show you some of the responsive modifiers in a sec. But you can see that I'm just working within this kind of like, 15 line of code window to make a fully custom design that I want. Okay, so now maybe a shadow on the card would be nice. So how about shadow XL? And we want to increase the contrast just in case this image is brighter. So we have a few options. We could do like a gradient overlay, or we could do a mask on the image, which is something I've been trying out lately. MI tab. There we go. Mask image. So if we flip this image mask, because I think it's like kind of masking the top of it, we'll get something like this, and maybe we bump these values up to like 100% and 0. And so that would be nice if the background wasn't white. So we can actually add a special utility called a scheme to the card, and that's darkest. So that will make us actually have a background color and a foreground color combination. So actually, like, I can get rid of that color white. This will actually respond to the scheme. So if I change the scheme to like lightest, you can see that happens. So it's a nice little thing that like registers some other variables or some other custom properties within it to help you work faster. So now we have a pretty slick card. Maybe I don't want the whole thing masked. So maybe I'm going to mess around with these values and see what happens if I go this way. Maybe I go this way down so it doesn't it shows a little bit more of the image, but still, yeah, how about 50 or even less? Yeah, something like that. 40% seems okay. All right, so now let's do a little animation on the image. So when we go to it, it hovers. I'll get to the link part later. I might not even need to link this right now, but okay, so here's how I would do the image hover. So when I hover over the card itself, I want the child image to scale up. And I'm taking another nod from Tailwind here where they add something called a group class to the parent. And then you just go to the child and say group hover, transform, scale. And then we're going to do it a little bit. Boop, boop, right? No transition, but we got what we want. So we just type transition and hit tab, and that'll give us a 0.3 second transition. Maybe I'll ease it. It's a little fast for my liking, so maybe about half a second. But if you look closely, you might notice that there's a little bit of like noise that happens when you do a transform, at least in Chrome. It feels like it's like shifting in a funky way. And so I could add a couple of more utilities here, but I kind of, they're kind of verbose, like backface visibility hidden, transform scale, whatever. This is just an example of maybe like how I want to write custom CSS instead and just say something like, I don't know, force 3D or something like that, or like animated thing. And then I say back face, visibility, hidden, and then like transform, scale 0, like, or something like that, or like 0.1. So that way I can actually just throw this class on there, and then I have animated thing. What happened? Backface visibility, transform. Oh, probably want to do 1.001. Sorry. So now when we hover over it, we actually don't see that funky thing happening anymore. Okay, it's a little bit on the down slope, but maybe there's another like thing we can do to make that a little bit less weird. But I don't think anybody's really going to notice. We might slow the speed down a little bit more and do something like that. Yeah. So, all right, we have our animated card. Let's use one more fun utility in Aviator to use this as like a template. So let's delete some of these lines, clean things up, and we can actually do this. So let's go to repeat. Good Lord, I can't type today. All right, repeat 3. So this is a special tag in Aviator that whatever is inside of this tag will get repeated this many times. So if I just fold this in by holding on its opening tag and then just copy it in, we'll get that. And that, without having to type all this crap 3 times and animate it 3 times, then I can then see, like, I probably want to reduce my gap now. Something like that. And my border radius is a little bit wild too. So let's pump that down to maybe 1. And less gap, option down, 1.5. And that's starting to look a little bit better. Maybe I will have 4 pieces here, and all of them will have little hover effects on them. Okay, I'm not going to do the link thing now because I don't want this to go on too long, but you could just probably do this and call it a day. I mean, you get the cursor pointer, and that's probably going to go somewhere. But I also, yeah, this is a good opportunity for me to show you how to use loops and logic inside of here. Loops and logic is another plugin for WordPress. It's free, and it allows you to do like templating in HTML. So let's go above our guy and just type the word loop with a capital L. And I'm going to expand that with a tab, and then I'm going to hit save to evaluate the loop. So these are a bunch of dummy posts that I have in my build here that this just went and grabbed. And so if I like wrapped this field with a paragraph, it would do that. Okay, it's getting gridded and stuff because of this 2-column grid, but essentially like this can help you go grab dynamic data with HTML, and Aviator is built for it. So you probably have already put the pieces together. Instead of repeating this 4 times with the same content, let's just wrap our card with that instead. So we'll delete our template, delete, and then we'll just fold the card, put the loop after the card, or close the loop after the card. And now we can go to project title and just type field. And then the default is title, because that's probably the most common thing you'd need. And now we have a 5-item grid where we can actually link these items to the URLs. Okay, so if you actually look in the lower corner of my screen, you can see that these URLs are going to those posts. Okay, and maybe we want to do other fun stuff like, you know, hover, transform, translate, y -1 rem or something like that, you know, just to play around. And, you know, obviously that's going to look cheesy. Transition. How does that feel? Probably would want it to be a little bit smaller. So 0.25 and then 0.5. Or maybe I would do something like, I know that I have this 0.75 second ease between these two. So I might like make my own little design system and say root like anim all 0.75 seconds ease, and then I just say transition that instead. So here we go, bing, bing, save it all, and now I get this kind of thing. Okay, and then I can change it all in one place if I wanted it to be way faster. Okay, all right, that's probably enough. This is how Aviator works. We delete some of these empty lines. That might muck it up a little bit for your eyeballs, but 15 lines of code, couple lines of CSS, and one more thing, responsiveness. This is gonna look like ass on mobile. So let's say we're gonna medium pad that 5 rem and just pad it like 2 rem on smaller screens, and then the grid will be medium grid calls too, so that it will just be a 1-column grid on small screens like this, right? And then on medium screens it'll go to 2, and then it'll keep going to 2. Maybe on like Excel screens or something like that, we want it to go to 3. So I'm doing responsive design right in here in the classes, just like Tailwind, so that like we don't have to go to some other panel and adjust some CSS property that we like need to go find somewhere. This is like the biggest pain point of the page builders, right? And I'll just throw in one more thing about page builders. They decide what CSS classes you can visually adjust with their forms. So like if you wanted these to be like underlined, they might have an underline option, like text decoration underline, right? And if I save that, I'll see that. But I bet like if you wanted the text decoration color to be, red on medium screens and larger, you're not going to have like a UI for that. There's just like CSS is too vast of a language for you to really have that. And maybe I want that to be my accent color instead, so it doesn't look so weird. And so this kind of thing like gives you so much control. And by the way, yeah, that works. So it won't be orange on smaller screens, but it will be on these. And I can go up to my query and just say like count, equals 4. This is a loops and logic deal, and maybe I want a 4-column grid on extra large screens. And I can just work quickly to make the kinds of layouts I need to make, so that I don't have to be dicking around with like a crazy UI every time I want to make something complex. So I think that's probably a good place to stop. 15 lines of code, and if you get Aviator, I'm happy to just give this to you. The whole point of Aviator and the real aggregate and the real big picture is for you to be able to leverage structures like this and learn from them, so that I can just like send this to you in a Facebook response or a text message, and then you can make this all happen and tweak it and poke at it a little bit to see how all of these things work. But hope that gave you a little bit of an understanding about how Aviator CSS works, and let's make some more of these. Let me know what kind of structures you want to see. No carousels, please. I'm not a huge carousel fan, but everything else is on the table. So take care. Dave Bloom signing out here. Later.